everybody, this is David Orlofsky, and welcome to the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Whether you're watching with our friends over at Tony Time, wherever you watch or listen to your podcasts, as always, we're happy to have you along for the experience. And we have a very special sponsor for this episode. All of my sponsors are special, but this one is a repeat sponsor. They come every year, and that says a lot about my listening audience, that they hear something that sounds just so wonderful that they want to be mechazek it. Last time we spoke about dailygiving.org, which chose to sponsor a second time because they got such a wonderful turnout. So this is a tzedakah that comes to us every year to allow us to participate in a very special mitzvah. I'm going to read it as it's put forward. That this is sponsored by the Chicago Chesed Fund in honor of their 5th annual Shas for Shidduchim campaign. What is that? We all know singles who have been struggling in the shidduch world. Maybe that single is you. As a community bound together by Torah values, we would do anything to help ourselves and each other through what can be a very difficult parasha. What if I told you there was a powerful way to do that? All you need is the right schus. Shas for Shidduchim at Shas, S-H-A-S, the number 4, Shidduchim, shidduchim.org, is a national initiative of the Chicago Chesed Fund that gives singles, along with their friends or family members, an impactful way to generate shidduchim. This Tu B'Shvat, on Monday, January 17th, hundreds of lomdim will complete all of Shas in 24 hours as a schus for Klal Yisrael's singles. According to the Ben Ish Chai, Tu B'Shvat is just like Tu B'Av, Zelu Umazeh. It's exactly 6 months apart, in the sense that it's a tremendous segula for singles looking to find their perfect match. What better way to reinforce this segula than with the limud Torah and tzedakah? And you don't even have to go out and dance in the vineyards, as we do on Tu B'Av, or Shabbos Nachamu Shabbatonim, whatever happens to be the present day manifestation of this. Yeah. Go to shasforshidduchim.org to sponsor a daf on behalf of yourself or up to 5 singles you know, so you can help harness the immense power of Tu B'Shvat, tzedakah, and limud Torah in their schus. And I want to add on a personal note, right? You all know that if you daven for somebody else, so that helps for you to be answered as well. So imagine if every single and everyone who has a single out there sponsored it for another single. Daven for me, and I'll daven for you. Okay. Anyway, all proceeds will go directly to support the Chicago Chesed Fund's many related services that facilitate shidduchim year-round, including consistent, proactive outreach to their extensive shadchanim network on behalf of singles, shidduch events and coaching, shaitels and wedding gowns for new collars and their families, and more for those who cannot afford it. Yeah. When I got married, the chassan's family used to do what was called flop, which was flowers, liquor, orchestra, and photography. So my brother, when his son got married, so he says, well, I'll provide flop. So they said, oh, no, today it's flops. He says, flops? He says, yeah, it's flowers, liquor, orchestra, photography, and sheitel. So he didn't know what to say. He had never heard of this, So he said to me afterwards, he goes, they must have spotted I was about tshuva and they figured they could take advantage of me. When my next kid gets married, my daughter gets married, I'll find a bigger Baal Tshuva than me, and I'll say, oh yes, the minhag is Flopsy, Mopsy, and Cottontail. Don't worry, I'll work out the Rashi Tevos, he said. In any event, to help them with shaitels and wedding gowns for new cows and their families and more. The expenses that go into a chasana is extensive. You don't even realize it. How many different things there are that go into having to make a chasana. Secure your schus at shasvoshiduchim.org. And once again, we're happy to have this wonderful cause as a sponsor for our program. And Amir Hashem, in the schus of all of the learning that we do together, and in the schus of all of us helping for this important cause. You know the famous Vart from the Stipler. The story goes that Rav Chaim Kreisworth had someone who was very sick, and he went to the Stipler to ask him what to do, and he says, in the morning, when you see the Brisa of Elu Dvarim, he says the order seems a little strange because it says Bika Cholim, Hachnasas Kala, Halvayas Ames. What's the Seder? He said what comes in between Bika Cholim and Halvayas Ames is Hachnasas Kala. So he advised Reb Chaim to get involved in Hachnasas Kala, and sure enough, for the rest of his life, he would raise money for kalas to be able to make their chasanas. So this is a tremendous mitzvah that has all kinds of wonderful things associated with it. So I'm going to finish up with my Tefillah series, not because we're done by any stretch of the imagination. I have a tshuka to really just go through the davening line by line and share my personal insights. But, we got to keep moving here. We got to keep changing with the seasons, with the times. I don't want to bore people too much. They get tired when I talk about one topic too much. So I want to finish up by talking about the concept of Kedushas Beis HaKnesses. Because you find throughout the Gemara that there's a difference between a person davening by themselves or davening with a tzibur. When you daven with a tzibur, there's more of a havtocha that a Kodesh Baruch Hu is going to answer your tefillah than when you daven by yourself. If you daven by yourself and you're able to get that level of kavana, get that level of effort that you have to put into your tefillah, okay, but not many people can do that. So when we daven with the tzibur, we know that the tzibur has a certain guarantee that their tefillahs are going to be accepted, and we want to be involved in that. And it's not enough just to daven at home. You can daven at home. But that is by no means considered the ideal. You never find this concept. This woman said to me she met this secular person who was wearing a necklace that had a Yud K Vav K on it, God's name. And then she said, you can't wear that when you go to the bathroom. And he laughed and he said, why, God's not in the bathroom? She said, I didn't know what to answer him. I said, what I would have told him is, and God is in the synagogue? Yet we go to the synagogue, right? We go to shul to daven. Why, God lives in the shul more than he lives any place else? So it's very interesting. I think it's the Arizal. The name Yud K Vav K of Hashem. If you take the first letter Yud and multiply it by itself, 10 times 10 is 100. You take the next letter Hey, multiply it by itself, 5 times 5 is 25. Take the Vav, multiply it by itself, 6 times 6 is 36. You take the last Hey and multiply it by itself, and you get another 25. Together, that equals 186, which is the gematria of Makom. Why? Because Makom is, I take Hashem and square it, and that gives me all of the space there is. And not all places are the same. the first parak of Kalim, which is right at the beginning of Tyrus. It says, Esa Kedushas Hain. There are 10 different levels of Kedusha. The purpose of this is because it goes and lists the different types of tumah. There are some tumahs that are more severe than others. And this talks about Kedusha. It says there are 10 levels of Kedusha. The first level of Kedusha is Eretz Yisrael. The second one are cities with walls around it from the time of Yehoshua. The third is Yerushalayim. The fourth is the Har Bayis, and it keeps moving in until you get to the Kodesh HaKadoshim. So, what does that tell me? That tells me that there are certain places where there's greater opportunity to tap Kedusha. That's the way it works. If you look at the way the Mishkan, and by extension the Beis HaMikdash was created, it's concentric circles. There was the Kodesh HaKadoshim, and then there was the Mishkan, and then there was the Chotzer Mishkan, and then there was Machane Leviyah, and there was Machane Yisrael, and then there was Chutz LaMachane. There's concentric circles. And you'll find that also the materials that are being used. There's more gold in the middle, and then there's more gold and silver, and then it's copper, and it moves out. The materials move out as you go to reflect the fact that there's a certain intensity. And so it works with the entire world. There's Har Bayis, Yerushalayim, there's Eretz Yisrael, there's Chutz La'aretz, and there's different levels of Kedusha, and different places have different Kedusha. The Sfas Emes says, why cities that were walled from the time of Yehoshua have special status? And he said, because the Canaanim were very good at sensing Kedusha. And they built a wall around that place where there was holiness to fill it with avodah zorah and depravity to counteract it. So when we came in and we saw those walls, we knew this was a place with a potential for holiness. When the Israelis in the Six-Day War invaded the Golan Heights, so we had a spy, Eli Cohen, who was pretty high up in the Syrian government. And it was his suggestion that the bunkers that were hidden throughout the Golan Heights would become very hot in the sun. So he suggested planting trees around them in order to be able to provide shade for the soldiers. And he ran the program where they planted eucalyptus trees all around these bunkers to provide shade. So the Israeli army knew that when they came in, they looked for a grove of eucalyptus trees, and they knew that's where the bunkers were, and they were able to blow them right up. We knew where they were. When we came into Eretz Yisrael, if we found a city with a wall around it, we know that's because the Canaanim identified this place as a potential for Kedusha, to be able to go in. And different places have different potentials for Kedusha. Rabbi Shapiro said once in a shir, the Arizal was born in Yerushalayim. You could still see the house that he was born in. He went to Egypt, and eventually he made his way back to Israel. He came to Yerushalayim, but he didn't go into the city. He kept traveling north till he came to Tzfas. And the question was why? And he said, because when I came to Yerushalayim, I saw Yoshka standing on the Har Habayis. Yeah, the Christian presence was so powerful. And he said the Maila of Tzfas was, and that's where the Mekubalim went there was never a church in Tzfas. That's what he said. Now, I found this fascinating. Chaim Saidor, who's the head of the Tzfas Foundation, gave a tour to us and my mother when she was alive and she was still well enough to travel around. So she used to come every Sukkot, and I used to find different things for her to do. And we went to Tzfas, and he gave us a tour. Some really fascinating things. And one thing is he showed us that they had dug up one of the largest Crusader castles in the Middle East in Tzfas. Now, it wasn't just a Crusader castle. it was from the Knights Templar. This was a group of Christian soldiers. They were a special order. They were considered great fighters and tremendous, powerful people, and also very religious. So I remembered what Rabbi Moshe said, and I said to him, is there a chapel in there? And he says, it's the strangest thing. They've dug up almost the entire castle, and they never found a chapel. So here they find this large Christian structure from the Knights Templar, who is this religious order, and there's no chapel in it? And I remember when, after being his man and we came back, I told this to Rav Moshe, and he wasn't impressed at all. It was like, I told you already. Like, he wouldn't have even had the kasha. I had the kasha. He wouldn't have even had the kasha, The Arizal said there was no church in Tzfar, so what's the question, Because 1,000 years ago, there was some giant castle that had been destroyed and buried. You think the Arizal didn't know, A lot of the kvarim that we have up north was identified by the Arizal. And you can find different ones. And then there are some that the Arizal did not find. Like the Kevra of Choni Amagal, which is up north. Is it in Chatzor? I'm trying to remember where it is. It was discovered by the Jewish Agency because they made a development town and they wanted the Sephardim to move there. So Sephardim wanted to live next to a kevra of a tzaddik. So they said, oh, yeah, Choni Magel's buried here. That's how Chaim Saidor tells it. But he says there's absolutely no tradition that his kevra was there. Yeah. So there you go. But there are others where you find these kfarim, and the Arizal said that this is where the person is, and you don't want to mess with the Arizal. Yeah. So to be able to have a makom of kedusha, and that's why there are halachas of a beis haknesses, of a shul, how you have to treat it. I want to tell you something that I think is kind of sad. That there are people who like to take pot shots. There are people who sit and learn. And it's painful to read. Why don't these bums go out and get a job? Why aren't they this, why that? All this kind of stuff, Why do we have to support them? I said, yeah, I know. A guy sits and learns in Kailo and makes $300 for like a half a day's work a month. $300. Like, he's really pulling in the bucks over there. It could be $600 a month. Wow, he's really stripping the society of its resources. That's where the big bucks are, is in Kolel. Forget about that. Yeah, but all kinds of various attacks. There was one that hurt me. It hurt me personally because, unfortunately, I've seen it myself too many times. Somebody wrote in and said, we have a kollel in our shul. And what bothers me is the sense of entitlement is such that they don't even feel an obligation to take care of the shul. You come in the morning and you see they had breakfast there, and there's cereal they had spilled on the floor, and nobody bothered picking it up. They left out the milk all night, nobody put it in the refrigerator. You go to the tables, the svarim all over the place, dirty coffee cups. Nobody bothered to clean up after themselves, put things away. A shul should be a holy place. And that hurts me because I've seen it myself. I've seen it with my own eyes. In the yeshiva of Kelm, they used to auction off the right to clean up the beis medrash. You paid for the schus. There used to be shuls where the women used to volunteer to go on their hands and knees and scrub the floors of the shul, or floor the steps going up to the shul. It's covered beis haknesses. There's an idea that when you're in a shul, you're in a holy place. And unfortunately, you don't see people behaving in a way like that. Barney Sullivan, who is a well-known mechanech in the old city, and tour guide, and really just a fascinating individual on so many different levels. So I happened to be davening mincha once in the Raban shul in the old city, and I saw him there. And after davening, I go over and say something to him, and he says, "Wait, come with me." And we walked through the shul. There's a whole little pathway to get out, etc. And he says, "I'm sorry, I don't talk divrei chulin in shul." And I thought, wow. I say that when people ask me something and I don't want to talk to them, but mamish, ad kedei kach, to be that makbid. Today, if you don't talk to somebody during davening, they get insulted, even though they have these big signs up and how terrible it is, and the terrible aveira it is for talking during davening. Someone asked the Baba Sali how come the Sephardic community, for the most part, was protected from the Holocaust, and he said, because we don't talk during davening. During the Chalminki uprising, Tach V'Tat, they added a special mishaberach for people who don't talk during davening, that they should be protected, because that was one of the chatoyim that was listed as what went on, because people don't take it seriously. But a Beis Knesset is a holy place. There are things that you're allowed to do in shul and things that you're not allowed to do in shul, and ways that you have to behave and to treat it. So therefore, when we go into shul, you're supposed to walk in, you're supposed to bow your head. Ideally, when you leave shul, you're supposed to walk out backwards. Like you see people walking back from the kaisel. That's how you're supposed to walk out of a shul. Yeah, most people don't do it, but there's a kedusha to a shul that has to be there when you walk in. So, since we're talking about davening, and going to shul is such an essential part of that, a little bit about davening in shul. And I may have talked about this in some of my earlier podcasts, but I want to just set everything up Keseder as I can. You have to choose a shul. Now, if you live in a town with only one shul, it's much easier, because there's only one shul. Someone said to me, I would never live in a town with one shul, because if I miss davening, everybody knows. Like this, I could always say I went to the other shul. But the fact is that if you have one shul, you have one shul. So then everybody feels a certain sense of obligation. I grew up in a very small shul, Young Israel of North Belmore. It was a small tzibur. And everybody felt like they were needed. They tell a famous story about a town that had exactly 10 mispalim. And every day they had a minyan 3 times a day. When the 11th guy moved in, they never had a minyan. Because everyone always figured, no, they don't need me. But when this is my shul, this is my shul. Love it or leave it. And the shul was, somebody said to me once, I moved to Eretz Yisrael, and here people use shuls just to daven. They don't feel an allegiance to the shul. So, I'll go to the minyan that's closer to my house. I grew up out in suburbia where I walked a mile and a quarter to get to shul. To be able to go and daven in an Orthodox shul, that was a big schus. My father, over Shalom, when he became Shomer Shabbos after his heart attack, so he was going to shul. It's a mile and a quarter, like I mentioned, and there was a snowstorm. He couldn't walk. So he said to my mother, he said, "Mother," that's what he used to call it, "Mother, we're moving." Lived in that house for 30 years. Yeah, we're moving. They moved to West Hempstead, where my 3 of my brothers were living at the time. And he told the real estate agent, "I need a house where I can walk to shul in a snowstorm." So he buys this house, a rundown piece of garbage. I said to my mother, I said, "You're going to live here?" Because I can't talk to him. Whenever I say anything, he says, "Look, the shul's right over there." He spent more money fixing up the house than he paid for the house, because otherwise my mother wouldn't come. And that was important to him, to have the shul right a block away. Towards the end, when he was sick, he had to go in a wheelchair and bring him to shul. And I remember I was diving with him once, and he noticed that the little cabinet under the Aron Kodesh, the handle had come off. So he went over and he looked at it, etc., and he ran out to Home Depot, buy a new screw, put the handle back on. The conservative synagogue where I grew up, that my father was one of the founders, he was a florist. So the first thing he did is he set up 2 planters on either side when you first walk in, one in memory of his mother and one in memory of my mother's father. Right away, Chavi the shul. That was a very important value to him. So if you do live in a town with more than one shul, more than one davening option, Rav Hutner once told the bacher who was trying to pick a yeshiva, says, sit in each yeshiva and learn, and see where you feel most comfortable. Because yeshiva is a tzinor, it's a pipe, and not every pipe attaches to another pipe. You have to see where you get your shefa. Same thing is true by davening. Some people love a very long, slow davening. They don't want to be rushed. They want to have time. A solid 10-minute shemona esrei. Some people want to be in a shul that moves it along at a healthy pace. And maybe not even a healthy pace. Maybe a very healthy pace. And they're off. So I'm not here to say what's right and what's wrong. Everyone has to find. Some people like a shul with a lot of singing. Some people like a nice, cold, Litvische davening. Aneshamelach, v'aguf balach, aneshamelach. Now, for me, I'm pretty sure that's going to be my personal gehenna. Just one long slicha is going on like that forever. That doesn't speak to me. I have a son-in-law. He's a Breslova. And I remember Pesach Kron was doing his bris, his son's bris. And he says to me, are they making a minyan? And I said, yeah. He says, oh, maybe I'll daven by their minyan. I said, no, you won't. He says, why? I said, it's Rosh Chodesh. He brings down all of his friends with all of their instruments, and they do like a 45-minute hallel. So it's like, oh, I'm not going to daven there. I said, no, I know you're not going to daven there. I'm giving you a heads up. Please, go find a minyan that's more to your liking. But when they used to make these on Chol Hamoed or on Rosh Chodesh, when there was a hallel, it was packed. People would come for this hallel that was mamish, such a beautiful extravaganza. Other people, certain places have like a Karlbach Kabbalah Shabbos, goes on for a nice long time, a lot of singing and a lot of, dancing. It's exciting. Other people, that's not their cup of tea. So you have to figure out what is the davening where you feel most comfortable. Some people want a place where everybody's friendly and they talk to you, and other people don't want anyone to know who they are. They want to be as anonymous as possible, come in and daven and go home and not be part of it. But as I mentioned, when I was growing up, a lot of the shuls were called Jewish centers, right? My mechutanim, the Liebermans, are still involved in the Queen's Jewish Center. Grunblatt was the Rav there for many years. It was a Jewish center. Yeah. What's Pshat Jewish center? It means it's not just Beis HaKnesses, is where you come together for the entire community. In Eretz Yisrael, someone said to me, your friends become your community because you're not part of a shul. You're part of a shul. There's all the activities that go with that you feel like you're a part of. It's something that you miss out very often, unless you have a unique sort of a setup. But when you have a shul, the shul becomes the center of everything. Davening is an important part, but it's not the only part. And when you daven with people that you feel a connection to, you know where you find this the most? Simchas Torah. Because if you've davened the whole year with people, and a Rosh Hashanah, and a Yom Kippur, and you had a whole Sukkot, and now you're going to a Simchas Torah. But if you, one year when my mother was here for Sukkot, So she wanted us to come to the hotel to be with her on Simchas Torah. So you're dancing with people you have no shaykhs with per se. Other than that, we were at Har Sinai together, and only some of these people were building the eagle, and that's not important. The point is that there's not that kesher. They haven't made that same investment. When there's an investment, it's different. I may have told this story recently. I don't remember, but there was a fellow who was learning in Lakewood many, many years ago. He was originally from Chaim Berlin. And and the Yom Tovim, he would go back to Chaim Berlin. So after a few years of this, the Mashgiach comes over to him and says, "You're not here for the Yom Noraim and for Elul." He says, "No, I go back to Chaim Berlin for that." He says, "Why?" He says, the davening is very special, the shmuzin are very special. So the Mashgiach said, "We have special shmuzin here. We have beautiful davening here." He says, "You're right. Kvod Mashgiach, what's my wife's name? How many kids do I have? What are they going through right now?" That's why I go to Chaim Berlin. I'm not looking for a generic shmooze. I'm looking for somebody who understands me and knows how to tailor the message to me to meet the needs of me and my family. So if you have a shul where you have a rav who understands all the people and what their needs are and how you put it into it, it's that's why I always had a tshuka to be a rav of a community, mostly for that aspect of it. And it's so funny. I was never really offered something, but there was a shul in Eretz Yisrael that was looking for a rabbi, mostly American community. And they called me up and asked if I would apply. Now, I never applied for anything in my life. I wasn't gonna suddenly apply for a job like this. And they said, no, please. So I said, look, tell you up front, if you're looking for a world-class posek, I'm not. I can paskin basic shilas, but anything real big, I'm not a dayan. I have people that I ask and people I speak to. I said, but if you're looking for someone to give shiurim and to build a community and work with families, that I'm good at. He said, that's exactly what we want. So I applied for the job. I had an all interview, and then I got a form email saying, we're looking at different candidates. So I was a little hurt, but but the idea of being able to have a community where you're able to build families and build people, that's always been my chukka. That's why I always wanted to make a yeshiva. The yeshiva I wanted to be was one where you don't just teach, but where you build talmidim, you develop them into people. Like Lahavdil, not that I'm the Alta, but like the Alta did in Slobodka, to take people and help them develop themselves into people. So you're looking for a shul that's a place that you can daven that will add to your meaning. And in my opinion, if it's one where there are people that you can feel a kesher to, that can become part of your community, that you feel that we're a tzibur davening together, that itself is a very powerful thing. So, hey, good luck with that. In any event, that's going to deal now with our Tefillah series. It could be we'll come back to this at a different time. We've been doing this for years. I don't know how many times we're going to, get to come around perhaps to certain other topics and things, but let's file that away. And now comes the question and answer portion of our program. Anonymous asks, how do we determine the balance between when Raban Gamliel said that he can't just put on Shabbos begadim to greet his father-in-law as Eisav did, because he wasn't on that level and he didn't want to look like a faker, and the concept of Mitoch shelo lishmah lishmah. So he says, I couldn't do kibbut of aim like Eisav because Eisav would do this thing. Daniel Levy once said, so you know what he did, so you do it. He says, because I wouldn't be doing that to honor my father, I would be doing it to copy Eisav. And if you're doing something just to copy somebody, that's not real. Not real. I'm not saying this is one of the best sources for it, but there was a theological work that came out many years ago, maybe 40 years ago, called Monty Python and the Holy Grail. And at the end, you had to cross this bridge. And so Lancelot goes first. He He says, answer me these questions 3 are the other side you wish to see. He says, go ahead, I'm not afraid of you. He says, what is your name? I am Lancelot of Camelot. What is your quest? Seek the Holy Grail. What is your favorite color? Blue. Okay. So he goes across. So Raban, who's the coward, comes up next and goes, oh, I can do this. What is your name? I'm Sir Raban of Camelot. What is your quest? I seek the Holy Grail. And what is your favorite color? Blue. No, green. Ah! He gets thrown over the bridge. You can't just say, So this person calls tech support, and he says, I put in my password, and it's not working. He says, well, what's the password? Well, I put in the same one as the guy sitting next to me. And he says, what was his password? 6 asterisks. You understand? It's not going to go because it weren't really the password. They don't show you the numbers. Or the famous, repeat after me. I state your name. I state your name, right? No, this actually happens, because the Rav does not want to say to the chassan, all right, repeat after me, Harayat mekudeshes li b'tabazu kazaz Moshe Yisrael, because it could be that the girl will be married to the rabbi. So instead, the rabbi says, repeat after me, Haray, at mekudeshes, say li. No, you say li. No, you say li. Well, there was an actual court case where the lawyer says, all right, all of your responses have to be oral. Do you understand? Yes. What's your name? Oral. Where do you live? Oral. So I'm just copying somebody. What's Mitoch, shelo, lishmah? The Metzil's Sharm says, Mitoch, shelo, lishmah doesn't mean that I'm just doing nothing. It means I'm not doing it for the purest intentions. I'm doing it to get olam haba. I'm doing it to get schar. I'm not doing it only to be able to serve HaKadosh Baruch Hu. And there's a Tosfos in Tainus when it says, someone who does something shelo lishma, it's a terrible thing. He says, that's when you're doing it because you want to fake people out. I put on a yarmulke and I pretend to keep Shabbos in order to get clients. It doesn't mean anything. On Route 17 going up to the mountains, this guy had a flat tire. He was wearing a yarmulke. So a car full from people pull over. So what's the problem? He said, I have a flat tire. He says, okay, where's the spare? And they jack it up and they change the tire for him. And as they're leaving, they see he's wearing a cross. He says, why are you wearing a cross? He says, I'm Christian. He says, why are you wearing a yarmulke? He says, what? He says, that thing on your head. He goes, oh, when I first started driving, my mother gave me one of these and said, if you ever break down, put this on and people will stop and help you. It's not representing anything. Yeah? So the answer is that I can try to do something where I'm doing what I'm supposed to be doing, and it's not for the purest intentions, and hopefully I'll develop pure intentions. As opposed to, I try to copy somebody who's doing something that's above and beyond. The Rosh Yeshiva in yeshivas used to wear long coats. And the Bachram would wear short jackets. And, the Rosh Yeshiva would be leaning on these old wooden tables, and it would wear away his elbow. So he would lift up the edge of his kaftan, or I guess it would be more like a bekisha. He would put it on the kapata. I guess the kapata. He'd put it up, and he would lean his elbow on it so it wouldn't wear out. So one of the Bachram sees this, and he takes his short jacket, pulls it up, and contorts himself into a position to be able to put it on. So Shiva sees him and comes over and says, some tricks you need a long coat to be able to do. Some things the Rosh Shiva does, but this is not for everybody. So if I'm doing it because it's an outpouring of something that I really feel, it's one thing. But if I'm doing it just because I'm copying what somebody else did, then it's not necessarily meaningful. Anonymous asks, wondering if there's anything that can be proven absolutely. Do I just have to believe, or can something be proven? For example, my existence. So, when we go to a court of law, we will put someone to death on the basis of guilty beyond a reasonable doubt. Could there always be a reasonable doubt? There could always be a reasonable doubt. In New York State, there was a case where a guy killed his business partner. And after all the evidence was presented and all the witnesses spoke, he said, at the end of the trial, in his own defense, he says, look, you claim that I killed my business partner. You claim I used this gun. You claim you have witnesses. And I tell you, you can't prove that my business partner ever existed. You can't prove that this gun exists. You can't prove that this courtroom exists. You can't prove anything. So the judge says, you're right. I sentence you to die by an electric chair that you can't prove exists. So although it's true that you can't prove anything 100%, because it could be that I'm hallucinating, and it could be that my senses don't work, and it could be that I'm in the middle of your dreams of reality and your reality of dreams, and you're really hooked up to the matrix. All of those are possibilities, but there's nobody who lives their life that way. And therefore, even the greatest existentialists will move out of the way when the truck is coming down the road at them. Because you have to live in the real world. So when you say, can you prove something? As much as I can prove anything. So can a person always say, well, maybe it doesn't exist? That's true. You could always say that. The problem is, of course, that when the lights come on and you're up in Olam Haba and you suddenly realize it, right? So when you mention my own existence, of course, Descartes, I think, therefore I am, whoever is having these thoughts exists. So that's why I know my own existence. And in fact, the Arizal explains that that's why HaKadosh Baruch Hu introduces himself to Klal Yisrael with the words, Anoichi Hashem Elokecha, I am. That just like you know you exist, you know that I exist. And that's why you're taught the Torah while you're in utero, so that the Torah becomes part of your essence, built into you. Daniel Levy asks, how can there be a Machlokes on a metzius? Did this happen or not to the yidden and the midbar? So the Maharal holds that when it comes to a Agadata, there's never any Machlokes. It's just describing it in two different ways. An example is the Gemara in Gittin, where it says by the Pelegish Bagiva, he got angry at her and kicked her out. Why did he get angry? So because of a hair. Either he found a hair in his soup, or he found a hair someplace where there shouldn't have been a hair, and he was almost hurt from it. And he got very upset, kicked her out. So he says, well, which one was it? Machlokes and metzius. He said both. First he found the hair in his soup, and he was upset. But when he found the hair in another place that it shouldn't have been, he got very angry because it was a 1-2 punch. So both are true. Whether one of them by themselves would have been enough. And that's what it means when it says, Elu ve'elu divrei Elokim chayim. For example, the Gemara says, there'll never be a Ben Soramora. The other Mandaima says, I was at his kever. That would seem to be somewhat irreconcilable. And the answer is, Avshalom was a Ben Soramora. Not halachically, but conceptually. His mother was a Eshet Shefas Toya, who Dovid took in battle. And the Gemara says, if you marry an Eshet Shefas Toya, the next parsha is Ben Soramora, because that's what you're going to end up with. And even though he wasn't halachically a Ben Soramora, he was philosophically a Ben Soramora. So when you say, I was by his kever, they mean Yad of Shalom. It means that there was a conceptual reality that was being expressed in that case. And that's how you have to look at every time you find a Machlokes. The Maharal explains this in the Gemara in Nedarim that says, why did we go down to Mitzrayim? And it brings 3 different reasons. And he says all 3 of them are the same reason. It's just 3 different manifestations of the same thing. So when you find a Machlokes in the metzius, it just means that the 2 of them are describing two different situations that were taking place, and just how do you understand the two? So yeah, you always need to reconcile those two. And the last one for this episode. Anonymous asks, what would you say to the many people who are disappointed that the corona pandemic didn't end with the coming Mashiach? Well, the first thing I would tell them is the corona pandemic apparently hasn't ended. And the way it's going, I don't think that it will ever end. It will just continue forever. There will always be another variant coming out someplace, and, this will go on forever. Yeah. So, what I've heard people describe as the new reality. But let's say we actually get out of the whole thing and Mashiach doesn't come. So what would you tell people who are disappointed the Mashiach didn't come? I would say, no. That's my usual response. As the Jews in Fiddle on the Roof were getting kicked out of Anatevka, they said, Rabbi, wouldn't this be a good time for the Messiah to come? And they say, yes, but until he does, we'll just have to wait for him someplace else. The Jews in the Holocaust were sure Mashiach was coming. They were sure there were those who said this is the Milchamas Gog and Magog. The answer is Mashiach will come when Mashiach will come. And if you're going to get disappointed, go find yourself another religion. I know one where they say the Messiah already came and everything's all great. So, and when he comes the second time, it'll be even better. But the first time was also a doozy. So, listen, what can I tell you? Mashiach will come when Mashiach will come. And we wait for him every day. I run my finances based on his imminent arrival, because it's either Mashiach or dead as prison. But disappointed, there's no reason to be disappointed. When the time comes, the time comes. And you'll know. Trust me, you'll know. It'll, unless you go with the Ari Goldwag song, where everyone's too busy, they don't hear the shofar. Yeah. Where is our hope and our faith and our fight? Where is the land down deep inside? When we say we want Ben Dovid to come, we can't fool ourselves or the Holy One. Oh, that was the first song where I found out that Facebooking is in fact a verb. I didn't know that. In any event, so he'll come when he comes, and Mitzvah L'shma should come fast. In the meantime, sign up for Shas for Shidduchim to make sure everybody has Shidduchim so that they can go and, meet Mashiach as a couple. Yeah, that's always nice. And in the meantime, if you want to find out more about this show, you can go to my website, RabiOrlofsky.com. You can leave a comment. You can sponsor an episode. You can listen to the songs, read articles. My Parsha Shiurim that I've been giving in Har Nof this past year are up now. So they've been coming out every 2 weeks. You can listen to those. There's a whole collection of different pictures of me, which are suitable for framing. Family simchas, if you make a big giant cutout of me, that's also, what could be more fun than that, You can, I don't know if it's on the website, but if not, we're going to put it up, the famous background of the bookcase so that you could, print it out and hang it up in your house and make your own Rabbi Orlofsky show. I have people come from America to take their picture in front of the bookcase. It was like, they have to go to the kaisel into the bookcase. Anyway, so that's it for this week. I'm David Orlofsky, and this has been the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.
It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Knowledge and wisdom will help you grow. Lots of fun in every episode, and we don't have to rhyme. No, we don't. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show on RabiOrlofsky.com. Torah anytime, YouTube and more. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Torah and Simcha, ready to go. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. Till next time, till we meet again. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show. It's the Rabbi Orlofsky Show.